Hello, everybody.
We're back.
We're back. It looks like a major problem. I'm going to try and get on to YouTube here.
Yeah. I was actually enjoying the conversation too.
Yeah, I was too. So let's finish off on our conversation because we were right in the middle of a hot topic.
Yes.
And
that
is we were dealing with child support and divorce separation in Canada. I'm not going to go because we will be able to pick up that last feed and put it in our video for the finished product, but I'm not going to go over what I've already stated. So we were talking about the federal child support guidelines and the inequality that started the change and when they were changed under the Federal Divorce Act, May 1st, 1997. So as I explained, the inequality in homes, they try to raise the standard of living. So you pay according to your income.
Right.
Your gross taxable income is what you pay. And there's a set of tables for every province, territory in Canada. The tables, they will say, if you have this, that'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. If you have these many children and earn this income, this is what you would pay. And it varies slightly between provinces because it's all based on, tax implications and that within your own province or territory you live in. So the arguments that you can attest to the argument. So way back when parents would separate if and we were saying moms usually had custody of the children, especially prior to the 90s.
Right.
And what was happening is you would have children that, live middle class life or upper middle class, parents separate and they're thrown into poverty. Right? Because you're taking a $60,000 income, and now that same income now has to support 2 separate homes. Right. That's what makes it difficult. It even makes it difficult now. I tell everybody that you are going to feel it financially because the same income, no matter how much money was coming in that home, whether it was a dual income or a single income, that same income now has to support 2 separate homes. Right. And that everybody's going to feel it. Everyone's going to feel it. Yeah. And there's a lot.
People need to be aware of that.
And I've always said, if they could write orders that say child support is payable directly to the children, people wouldn't argue.
No.
But the reality is, you can't pay directly to the children. I look at my
40 pounds of chocolate in my closet.
I'm looking at my 5-year-old granddaughter, and if you gave her, I don't know, $300 a month or something, 500, whatever, I'm pretty sure her bedroom would be loaded with dinosaurs, right? She'd have chocolate stashed everywhere, and there'd be a whole bunch of glow sticks and balloons.
Exactly.
So the reality is, and
then people question the validity of giving it to the other spouse.
Right. And so I always use this to keep things in perspective. It's a little bit out of the ordinary, but when I first started this, that was my first job with the implementation of the new federal child support guidelines. So, and I had this gentleman in front of me one day, and he had come in and he was fit to be tied, literally fit to be tied. He was so angry. He didn't want to pay child support anymore because when he paid child support, she took the money and went and bought herself, she being the ex-wife, bought herself a pair of shoes. Now, he had 3 children. And this was an old order prior to May 1st, 1997. And he paid $50 a month for 3 children. And he wanted to terminate it because she bought herself a pair of shoes. So I was in a unique position. I didn't exactly know how to approach it, but I just asked him politely, do you think your children, eat more than $50 a month worth of groceries? And he said, well, yes. And I said, well, maybe your check wasn't there on grocery day. And he actually sat back when he thought about it and
Yeah.
sat back in his chair and thought about it. He goes, oh, I never really thought about it that way. And then I said, and then I had to explain to him that if he chose to bring this back now, it would now be according to his income. And he would now be paying $1,300 a month for child support for his, I can't remember, no, three. He had three children, right,
Okay.
based on his income. And he said, I should probably just leave. And I said, that would be a very good idea. If you just get up and walk out, you were never here, right? Anyway, but it's one of those situations. But it's one of those situations people get so caught up in, well, the
money's for this
where the
for
money's
that.
going. But the thing is, does your child do they have a roof over their head? Are they eating? Are they clothed? Do they have the necessities of life? Because that doesn't come from
Not
anywhere.
only that, but one of the things.
I'm
Oh,
boring
excuse
her.
me. I have no idea why I'm yawning. Maybe change of thought here.
Yeah.
Just the amount of money that it takes to have two people living in a house,
Right.
is still, because you have to have two bedrooms. You can't go rent a single bedroom when you have children.
Well, no, and I had said that to you before.
There's all this you have to think about that people don't think about.
Well, and I can say this on a personal level. My husband said to me one time, because we usually had the children come out for a month in the summertime, and he had said, I don't understand, why am I paying support when we're paying to have, and the children are here for a month? And I just looked at him, I said, well, it's not like she can rent out their rooms. And he goes, oh, you know what? I never even thought about it. And I said, yes, her groceries are going to go down. And yes, maybe the electric bill might go down, and maybe the water might go down. But all the, staple bills, like your cable, your internet, your telephone,
They
your
still have
cell
to be
phone,
there.
all of that, the mortgage payment, all of that, insurance, everything, all of those payments still have to keep going.
Yeah.
Right. So it's important to remember that. Now, it's important to understand the different types of custody or parenting and how child support is applied to that.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is because people think, well, people commonly confuse joint custody with shared custody. They are not the same. Okay. Shared custody is jointly shared custody. We call it equal.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
50-50 parenting. Right? The actual legislation reads that neither parent shall have the child or children any less than 40% of the time.
Right.
Okay. And they called that shared custody, shared parenting.
Right.
People confuse that with joint. But see, joint custody just means you have equal rights.
Right.
Okay.
But the child might live with you full time.
But primary residence could be with mom or could be with dad.
Right.
Right. So it's very important to know what type of custody you have before you start crawling down the child support road, because it could vary. Okay. Right. People think if you have 50-50 custody or shared parenting that no child support changes hands. Not true. How it works is mom takes her income and how much she would pay support for two children.
Right.
Dad takes his income and how much he would pay support for two children. If they have the same income, is the only way no money is going to change hands. Just so that you understand that.
I see.
And so
I didn't understand that.
Right.
But now I do.
So what happens if dad makes 100,000, mom makes 50, dad, the offset amount in the difference, she might have to pay $800 a month. He may have to pay $1,600 a month. They deduct the difference and he would owe her, even though they have 50-50 parenting or custody, he would owe her the difference of $700 or $800 a month, whatever. I can't remember. I said $1,800, $1,600. Anyways, the reality is that's how that works. and it's shared. Do not confuse joint with shared. Joint just gives you equal rights. You will commonly see joint custody to both parties with primary residence to remain with the mom or remain with the mother or dad or whatever. But that's how you would see it.
Right.
That just means you don't have to go through each other to get information. You can go directly to the source, like schools, doctors, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All right. And the other type of custody I really don't like to talk about because it is extremely rare these days, and that's sole custody.
Right.
Right. And that's where only one parent.
Usually, is that not usually given nowadays? That's something that usually a parent will sign away their rights and walk away from the child. But that doesn't mean that does not mean that they are not paying support.
Right. Okay. So a lot of people.
So that's
we used to field a lot of calls like this, especially through the courts.
Right.
A lot of calls. Well, if I sign over my rights, because you could be dealing with in a situation where it's a one night stand. They were never really boyfriend or girlfriend or anything. Yep. And if I just sign over my rights, that's it. I'm done. I don't have to pay support or anything. I'm like, no, that just means you're signing over your parental rights, not your obligation to support this child.
No.
Okay.
Just your obligation.
Just to be clear that you really need to check with your legal community in your area. Most areas have what we call law information centers or family law information centers where you can get all of this information across Canada.
Right. And most of the time it's free, isn't it?
Right. In most cases, it is free and even done within the court systems, right? Because I know Nova Scotia, I know BC, I know Alberta, and I'm positive Ontario. They have Family Law Information Center. Yeah. I'm pretty positive. In all of my years, I've dealt pretty much with every province and territory that they have that information. Yeah. So it's easy to get. Sometimes it's hard to decipher. That's the issue, right? And that's what I was trying to do is just break it down a little bit so people understand. Don't get confused with custody, access, parenting.
Well, and that's why I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah,
because that's how we started. Mm-hmm. Let's face it, we started because it should be something people separate. Don't put those two things together in your mind.
Right. Ever. And
that's a benefit to you, but it's also a benefit to your child.
Well, and the other important thing to remember, and I always tell people, for those of you who are out there that may be struggling and not getting your child support payments or whatever, I'm going to be brutally honest. Those who don't pay, don't. It's not going to change. Okay. If you're always going to be chasing that tail. Yeah. Okay. The thing is, there are agencies out there that now do that for you.
Yeah.
They're government agencies, maintenance enforcement programs,
family. Can you believe there was a time it was a man or a woman's deal? They would have to go chase that person down.
Yes, there was a time, and there was a time where there were no enforcement officers, or I'd say enforcement offices anywhere, but every province and territory has one now. Yes, it takes time, but it never goes away, and it gets put in a database, and you can't even win money in Canada
without it going through that database.
If you owe money in support.
Yeah.
Okay, just letting you know that, because that's all. It affects your credit, everything now.
Yeah.
So it's one of those situations. And
if you feel like, and that's something that I always said was important too, there are recourses for people out there, women and men, who feel like their world's falling apart because they really don't have any money. They're not being able to meet all their bills, and they're still in need of paying this child support. And I'm bringing that up because that's a reality,
especially right now.
Especially right now, there are emergencies, and there are places and people that they should be calling. And you know who some of those places.
The worst thing you can do in this situation
is
bury your head in sand. But anybody's going to tell you this. We're just older and wiser. Anybody's going to tell you this. It's always going to come back and bite you in the butt.
It will.
It will always come back to bite you. Don't bury your head in the sand. Like any other debt, it does not go away. And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? The problem with this is that because it's government enforced, it's government enforced federally and provincially. So you lose driver's license, you lose the ability to even register your vehicle.
The passport.
Passports and and don't let it get to that. And you don't have to.
I hear about that because I hear the horror stories. Oh my God, my
right.
buddy
and
lost his driver's license, and then he lost this, and he couldn't get that, and he ended up losing his job. Now, what help did that do? And I'm like, yeah, but why wasn't it stopped before that?
Because here's the point. People get themselves in a situation. They're not sure what they need to do or even where to start. It's kind of like gaining weight, right?
Yeah. It becomes an overwhelming problem.
Once you know, at first you owe 1,000, 2,000, then 15,000, then 34,000, and it becomes so overwhelming that it actually affects your mental health, your physical and everything else. But you can deal with this, okay? Yes. Here's the point. It's based on income. There's 3 ways to determine support. There's a reason why they always ask you for your last 3 tax returns and your 3 current pay stubs. This is why, people, because number 1, your child support could be based on your previous year's tax return. And for people who worked in the government or have a steady income that never really changes that much, perfect. It's based on your previous year's tax return. Then you can base it on your current income. So if you've just switched jobs and you're not exactly sure what you're doing or how much you're going to make, they can do what they do in average. They take your 3 current pay stubs, your year to date, and they try to average your income. Then the other way to determine child support is what we call based on an average of income, where they take your last 3 tax returns and they average your income over the last 3. And every year that goes by, you add on the new one and take away the latter and do the same. This works perfectly for people whose incomes go like this. And in the gas and oil field sector, and particularly here in Northern Alberta,
any seasonal
workers or whatever, this is perfect because you may have a booming year one year, right? But the next year you could really nosedive, right? Yeah. And so on that year, they're expecting you to pay. You're only making 60,000. The year before you made 150, right? And they're expecting you to pay child support based on your 150. Yeah. This all can be dealt with. All you have to do, call your local courthouse first. They have all the information. They have all of the forms, everything you need.
Don't lose faith, first of all.
Right.
You can deal with it. And if you deal with it quickly.
Yes, there are things such as stays of enforcement and everything else to stop maintenance enforcement from enforcing the file until you can get this all resolved, right? But my advice to you would be deal with it, right? It can be dealt with. It's not overwhelming. It may be the end of the world in your world right now, but trust me, the courts.
And 10 years from now.
I'll put it to you this way, even $35,000 in debt, you set those arrears and you make a repayment plan. Right? Yeah. There are ways to deal with it. Yeah. And, I just think that dealing with it is better than not dealing with it because we all know how horribly wrong it goes.
Yes.
Right? So that's sort of my thing on that.
I guess that's why I'm bringing that up, because right now support, we're talking about support. We're talking about support during a pandemic. Mm-hmm. We're talking about both sides could be struggling.
Absolutely.
And I'm just trying to come at it as if maybe there might be somebody out there who is losing a little faith in that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they just needed a little direction. And I think you knew where to send them.
Right. And the thing is that, and one more thing before we end it all, is some clarification on what we call Section 7 expenses, or extraordinary expenses in relation to children. So this kind of is a gray area. And I figured out, because I've worked in 2 different provinces now, that it depends depends on interpretation. So in one province kind of interpreted a little bit differently than interpret how the judiciary in this province may interpret it. So Section 7 expenses are extraordinary expenses, okay? Right. And that is any medical, dental, orthodontic, tutoring, counseling, vision, eye care, not covered by an existing insurance policy. Right. Okay. So if it was,
I think I got it.
Okay. So if those expenses were covered by an insurance policy, if there was a difference left over, then the parents would be required to pay that difference.
Right.
Proportion to their incomes.
Okay. Just like the amount is proportionate to their income as in support.
Right. So let's say, just to use round numbers, let's say dad makes $70,000 a year, mom makes $30,000 a year. Dad pays 70% of that expense, mom pays 30%. Makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. Not going to get into the tax implications. That's a whole new tutorial, and I'll leave that to you guys to talk to your local, lawyers or legal advice or whatever on that. But the reality, that's basically how it works. It's proportion to income. When it becomes tricky, daycare is always a given if it allows one party to go to work.
Okay.
And that is a Section 7 expense. The area where it becomes gray is extracurricular activities and school expenses. So for instance, in Nova Scotia, I don't know about now, can't speak to now, but there were no school expenses. You didn't have to pay $180 for your kid to attend school.
Right.
Okay. But in Alberta, there was.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So is that an extraordinary expense? Well, let's think about that. No, every kid that goes to school has to pay it here.
Right.
Right. So is that included in regular child support, your table 3 for the necessities, or is it over and above? Okay, so this is where it becomes complicated, right? Now, a lot of parents will make their own agreements when it comes to the Section 7 expenses. Extracurricular activities, nobody wants to take away from a child what they're already doing.
Yeah.
Right. So if they're involved in hockey or, a sport of some.
Look, you can't tell you're Canadian. If they're involved in hockey.
Because it's one of the most expensive. No, it's not. I beg to differ. Never seen it before in my life till the last 5 years. Cheer.
Yeah, it's become very expensive.
Cheer, dance, cheer is so expensive. Like I've seen people paying $20,000 a year for their kid to do cheer.
It's a sport.
It's a huge competition. It's a huge sport. And all I can say is I was shocked because I always thought like figure skating, hockey, all of that was the most. No, not until I got in. I saw some receipts and bills for cheer and I almost choked. I couldn't believe it. But anyway, I'm just saying these are things that have to be discussed, and they are included under the federal child support guidelines. You do have the inclusion of what they call Section 7 extraordinary expenses, and that's over and above. That's why it's called Section 7, because Table 3 is your actual quantum amount of monthly child support. Right. So clear as mud?
Anyways,
it's one of those subjects. I just thought I could bring a little bit of clarity.
I think you did. And I think you can understand why it's important that there is laws. There are these things there to help the child.
They're not look here.
And it is evolving. And that's why I came in. I'm trying to explain my point of view, right? There you go from this angle,
right?
And maybe nowadays, to nowadays, I look at the difference,
right?
Okay, and what was the expectation, and what kind of changes a child was required to go through during the divorce.
Yeah,
and now the laws are evolving to minimize those changes.
Yes, because I think I've already noted that. the best interest of the
right.
child.
No,
right?
you did
Yes.
already know that.
That first and foremost, they try to do what is in the best interest of the child. It gets convoluted because sometimes parties, when you're dealing with anger, hurt, and resentment, their perception,
they think they know what's best for the child,
right, but their perception is skewed with anger, hurt, and resentment, and a lot of times the children are the ones that
and
come
it's
out on the
important for
short
everyone
end
to
of that
remember
stick.
that statistics actually prove that children that have both parents in their lives usually will do better.
Oh yes, absolutely.
So if you can keep that somehow in your overlook in your, as you said, anger, hurt, resentment.
Right.
Well, if you can see that by also remembering.
Right.
Right. So.
All right.
Now, what's up, Lichess?
What's up, Lichess? So we've been using our creams.
Our retinol. 24. And I am completely makeupless tonight.
Yes, you are.
And
I am not.
Oh, I am. And I really haven't seen I
notice a difference under your eyes.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. So there you go.
Yeah, I notice a difference under your eyes. That's the only difference I've noticed in mine.
Yes.
That they didn't seem as puffy and as.
But I also noticed I did notice a more generalized complexion, less blotchiness.
Yeah, I'd like to say that, but I have a blotch here. I think I might have covered it up, but I've had this red blotch, and I asked my husband, it just doesn't go away. It's there forever, right? Anyways, and he goes, yeah, it looks like you got a zit, right? I'm like, no, I mean, it doesn't even hurt. It's just a red blotch. Anybody have any suggestions for that? Let me know. Somebody said lemon juice, but who knows? Anyway,
I just want to get rid of the lemon juice would change the. Yeah. I think that's kind of cool. So,
are we ready? We're ready. Well, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties.
Yeah, sorry, everyone.
I think it has a lot to do with bandwidth. Especially we're having issues in Grand Prairie with everybody being on the internet and at home, and our bandwidth. We've gotten notifications, just is having a hard time accepting it all, I guess, in the tech world. That's all I'm saying. I don't know. All I know is our sound went out, and and funny enough, we rebooted, started right back up, and
so far we still have sound.
Yeah, we forgot to turn our light back on, though.
Oh, that's
all right.
I think we can go without it.
All right. Well, you guys have a good week, and we will see you again next week.
And I hope we gave you something to
chew on. Night, everybody.
Night.
No.